Greetings, Deep Dive Podcast listeners. This is your boy, Sam Oram, coming at you with another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. Guys, we've been blowing and going for the entire year. We are so excited. Season two, as I've been saying, is really incredible. We've had some incredible topics, some incredible guests, and it's only going to get better. So I'm really excited and thankful for all of you who are participants and followers of the Deep Dive Podcast. As we've shared before, this podcast originates in over 170 different countries around the world, and that's something that we take a lot of pride in. So we certainly appreciate you, and we appreciate all of your support. Without you, there would be no Deep Dive Podcast. So we certainly thank you for that. We just wrapped up a 5-week series on financial education. And guys, so many people have really been excited and empowered by that series, that financial education series. We talked about everything in terms of, starting your own business, what's assets and liabilities, and how we can continue to grow financially and otherwise. So that was a lot of fun. It was a great series, and we want to continue to move forward. And remember, our podcast is designed to empower people, to educate them, as well as entertain. We have people on from time to time to entertain you, but we also, like to make sure that we're giving you substance that you can empower or change your lives with. So over the past 5 weeks, we have done that with our financial education series. So we may do something similar in the future, but we certainly had a lot of fun doing that. Tonight we're going to talk about mental health, the importance of mental health, and we're going to share some things with you. The differences between mental health and mental illness and those type things. And the reason we're doing that is because this is the month of May. It is actually Mental Health Awareness Month, and so many things and so many people have been affected by mental health or mental illness in varying ways, that we certainly wanted to be able to bring some clarity to you in terms of the mental health space, what that means, the mental illness space, what that means for people who may know people who are challenged with mental health issues. Then we want to be able to give whatever advice or information that we can. I do want you to keep in mind that I'm not a professional. I'm not an expert in the mental health space. I've basically studied some things, and I know a lot of people who have shared intimate details in terms of what mental illness is and how it actually affects their day-to-day lives. And I don't want to, overlook the importance of what mental health and mental illness is all about. So again, I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be a professional in any way, shape, or form as it relates to mental health consultation, but I would give you enough information, or tell you that I'll give you enough information tonight that if something is sparked in your mindset in terms of what you need to do to continue to improve your mental health, and what does that mean, then by all means, I want you to follow up with a professional accordingly, so that, you'll be able to continue to live that high quality of life that we're always talking about. So we're going to get right into that in a second, but I also wanted to thank our sponsors again. We've had a lot of people who have sponsored the different podcasts. We have a lot of people who really want some more attention in other parts of the world. So we're going to have to do some things that will capture our international audience a bit more. And that's going to be a lot of fun as well. I think anytime we get an opportunity to expand outside of our comfort zone, wherever we are, that gives us the ability to grow. And where we can grow, that helps us build capacity that we always talk about. So that's going to be important as well. So we'll talk about that. And we look forward to doing some things with some of our friends in other parts of the world. As a matter of fact, I've been invited to speak on several different podcasts in Africa and the Netherlands and other places, that I'm going to be participating as a guest in some podcasts. And then we'll obviously, have some of those individuals be a part of what we're doing here at the Deep Dive Podcast. I think our last international broadcast was from Croatia about a month or so ago. So we want to continue to do that so you can get a different flavor on what empowerment means around the world. All right. So let's just get right into a couple of things as it relates to mental health and the importance of mental health. I think the topic that we talked about, the importance of mental health, one thing that I did not know, and I'm sure a lot of people are in a very similar situation, I wasn't making a distinction between mental health and mental illness. I kind of had all of those things clumped, if you will, into one big category. And during my research, I understand that now that those are two totally separate things. You aspire to have mental health because what that is actually successful mental activity. That means you're actually succeeding and you're thriving because of, or even in spite of, your mental challenges. So mental health is a good thing. And if you really think about it, and had I thought about it, it just makes all the sense in the world. Mental health is healthy. Mental illness is ill. It's an illness, right? So, I had to make that distinction and it makes a whole lot of sense. So again, mental health, it just refers to you being able to successfully or have successful activity in whatever capacity that you're living life, in spite of any type of challenges or just period. That's mental health, and that's a good thing. On the other hand, when you start talking about mental illness, a lot of times those things there may be challenges with mental illness that you may not be able to control. So think about it from this perspective. With mental health, you can have productive daily activities because you have a some mental stability or mental health. Even from a standpoint of, a lot of times people may feel that they're stressed, right? And stress can be a form of mental illness. But in a lot of cases, stress is just a thing that can be circumvented if you have mental health. I think everybody deals with some type of stress in their lives, day-to-day lives. So does that mean every single person suffer from mental illness? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that that is a thing that we have to succumb. And if we can do that readily and still successfully go through our day-to-day activities, then we have some form of mental health. However, if you have forms of stress, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, that you cannot control for varying reasons, then that may be a form of mental illness. And we want to be able to, again, understand those differences so that we can address them accordingly. Most people who have mental health can cope with stress. Okay, again, mental health. You can cope with stress. Mental illness, on the other hand, could be a whole nother ball game. So a lot of times when you're talking about mental illness, that actually occurs when the brain or part of the brain is just not working well, or it's working in the wrong manner. It's working in a manner that it should not be. Okay, so think about that for a second. It may not be working well. Again, we're talking about mental illness now, or it may be working in a way that it's not working properly. It's working in the wrong way. Sometimes when you think about the brain, the mind, and the brain function, and I want you guys to get this too, because I know this may not be a sexy topic, but it's a very, very, very important topic. Even if it's not for you, you may be tuning in to get this information so that you can empower someone else or recognize what's going on with someone else and maybe prevent some type of tragedy or even lack of quality of life for them. I'm sure most of you have heard by now, one of the singers, Naomi Judd, I think is her name. She was with the singing group, the Judds, and she recently committed suicide. She actually shot herself, and her family shared the fact that she was suffering from mental illness. There were some things that were challenging her mentally, and it was from a standpoint of being sick, illness, not mental health issues, but mental illness issues. And long story short, she was suffering for a while from mental illness. She shot herself. And you think about this. I think the family shared that she shot herself, committed suicide the day before they were going to be honored for some type of award, a great accomplishment. Now, I say that to say this. Imagine the fact that you've worked for something all of your life, right? To have your peers recognize the things that you have done and give you attaboys or kudos to what you have done by, giving you an award or something to that effect. And the day before you are to receive that accolade, you actually commit suicide because the pain of the illness is greater than the reward of the accolade. Let me say that again. The pain of the illness was greater than, and I'm talking about Naomi Judd, was greater than the pleasure of the accolade or anything else in her life. Think about this, guys. She has a beautiful family. She has, thousands and thousands, if not millions, of adoring fans. Yet that wasn't enough to overcome the pain of the mental illness. You have to be able to understand this. You have to be able to understand the importance of it, especially, again, if the brain is not working properly, then there's one or more functions of the brain that have been disrupted, whether it's, how you think, how you perceive certain things. Sometimes when your mind is not working properly, you may perceive something in a totally different way that, from someone or something that may be considered quote unquote rational, right? Now, again, I don't know, I'm not a professional, so I don't know all of the professional terms, but you understand that your perception may be a little bit different than what would be conceived as something typical. You may go through emotional challenges, emotional roller coasters where, sometimes you're in an extreme high, other times you're in an extreme low. These are signs that your brain sometimes, now I'm not making a blanket statement, but sometimes this can be an indication that the brain is not working properly. Your physical behavior, just varying things. These could be some warnings that these things or your brain may not be working properly. Do you know people who they have drastic, extreme emotional highs and lows, right? They either super high or they get in a very, very depressed state of mind. A lot of times that's from not so much something that they can control, but it could be something that is not working properly with their brain. In a lot of cases, it could be chemical imbalances. It could be from medications or things that may have caused some type of brain challenge, right? There are people who suffer from bipolar disorder, which is a physical, a chemical imbalance that can be controlled through medication and other means. So there are a variety of reasons that someone may go through extreme highs or extreme lows, but you have to be aware of this, especially if it's happening to you. And a lot of times people can't do a self-evaluation because you're not honest with yourself a lot of times. Like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, everything is great. And that may or may not be the case. But the reason this podcast is important and the reason I wanted to do it during Mental Health Awareness Month is because if you know of people who may be challenged with some things that they cannot see themselves, then it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we're, first of all, a support system. If we have to escalate certain things to a point of just pulling them aside and doing some type of interaction or getting some type of help. It's just that important. I mean, think about it. I don't know the situation with Naomi Judd and her family. Don't get me wrong. I don't know at all, but I can only imagine that they wish that Naomi Judd would have, said something if she didn't, said something more, I don't know. I don't know what the answer would be, but I can pretty much guarantee that the family would have wished that they could have done more or known more. That's the importance. Excuse me. That's the importance of us being able to recognize these symptoms so that we can keep an eye on our loved ones or people that we know, or just mentor to people when they're going through some things. I mean, it's very important. A lot of times people have thinking difficulties or difficulties focusing. That's another indication. That's another symptom that the brain may not be working properly. Sometimes you have sleep issues, right? Sleep problems. That may be another indication that the brain may not be working properly. And we need to get some help in some way, shape, or form. Look, all of you who have been following the Deep Dive podcast, you know that I'm big on mentorship. I'm big on the mindset. I'm big on, thought, the mind in terms of thoughts. Well, one of the things that I do, and one of the things that I encourage everybody to do, is to mentor people who are being challenged in any aspect of life. Now, we're not just talking about mental health or mental illness in terms of mentorship. We're talking about being able to be there or share with someone some of your experiences that may help or benefit them, or even being a sounding board for a person who may be in distress in any form of life, whether it's business, whether it's a personal relationship, or whether it's mental illness, to be that sounding board for that particular person, because it may just be that one thing that could save their lives. So me as a mentor, I've talked to a ton of people, right? I've talked to a ton of people intimately, and we will never share what we talk about. However, the struggle for a lot of people, it's real. It's real, guys. The struggle is real. You'll see people every day in your workplace, in your, just your daily lives, your family members. You'll see people all the time, and you'll think that they got it going on. You'll think that everything is fine, everything is great. As we say in the country, everything is hunky dory, right? But there's a lot of people who are suffering in silent misery. There are a lot of people who are suffering in silent misery. The one thing that I implore people to do, one of the things that I really would stress to people, and again, I'm standing on the outside looking in, so it may be easier said than done, but I would really implore people to just talk to someone. Talk to someone. I think, and I really believe this in my heart of hearts, every single person, everybody needs at least that one person that they could share everything with, no matter how intimate or painful or personal it may be. I think everybody needs that person. Everybody needs that outlet. I strongly, strongly, strongly believe that. I have been coached and mentored by many, many different people over my entire life. Mentors were placed in my life, and I use that word placed loosely, but placed in my life at certain times when I needed certain things. One of my first mentors, a guy by the name of Farrell Duncan, he's passed away, but he was my band director in high school. And because I grew up in a household where I didn't have a father in the household, he was one of the first father figures in my life. And he shared some things with me from a mentor standpoint that allowed me to grow. Right now, how does this relate to mental health? Well, it's simple. The mere fact that he shared some things with me that allowed me to grow it gave me the ability, the capacity. We always use that word. It gave me the capacity to deal with some things on that level and the next level that I may not have been able to deal with were it not for that education, were it not for him being a sounding board, were it not for me being able to talk to Mr. Duncombe and say, hey, look, this is what my life is, this is what's going on. And can you help me out? That's a form of mental health because he poured something in me that I didn't have the ability to pour into myself, right? That's the power of mentor. That's the power of sharing. I remember when I finished my education at Florida A&M University, and before I took that next step, this is like the summer of that particular year, and before I took that next step, I went back to my hometown of Montgomery, where Mr. Duncombe was. And at that time, he was no longer band director. He was a principal, I think, at one of the schools. And I went into his office because I had a life-changing decision that I needed to make. I'd gone to Florida A&M, and my major was pre-med, and I also had a minor in music. But music has always been my first love, being an instrumentalist, coming up through the band, having a band scholarship, being band president, band fraternity, all these things. My life was all about music, instrumental music, band theory, music theory, and things of that nature. So that I was passionate about that. But to be honest with you, there wasn't a robust career for me being in music, especially a instrumentalist. I didn't want some money; I wanted a lot of money, and so being an instrumentalist, and this is no knock at any of my instrumentalist friends out there, but it's hard to make millions just playing an instrument, and I needed millions, right? But anyway, I the summer of once I left Florida A&M, before I went to UAB in Birmingham, I went to sit down with Mr. Duncombe as my mentor, and I told him, hey, look, I have a decision to make. I could go into medicine, I could go into music, and what my heart is, Mr. Duncombe, because you were the first person, one of the first people who really showed me the value of the art of music. So that's what I want to do. I want to be a band director, Mr. Duncombe. I want to be like you, I want to do those type things. But I had this education in terms of medicine, and I don't know. So what do you think? And he shared with me just with a straight face, no, playing around, no kidding whatsoever. He's like, look, I know you're passionate about music, but to compare the music industry as an instrumentalist in the medical profession, there is no comparison. He said at the time, and I don't want to lie in terms of the number, but I want to say he talked about a band director, a high school band director at that time was making like 30 grand a year. And he said, all the things that we have to deal with, not just with the students and helping students learn and grow and teach and all these other things, but you're talking about, the politics of the educational system, the principal, the board of education, all these things that, Sam, I know you don't want to deal with. I strongly encourage you to continue to pursue the medical profession. And he said it emphatically. And because of the respect that I had for him as my mentor, there was no question from that point on what I was going to do. And that's exactly what I did. Now, again, why am I saying that? And how does this relate to mental health and mental illness? Well, it is a form of mental health because a mentor, a sounding board, a person that you can put all your trust in. See, I love my mama, love my mother like no other, but I didn't ask my mama, right, about what should I do. She didn't have the capacity, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but she didn't have the capacity to give me the decisions that I needed to make as a man, as a musician, and so forth and so on. She didn't have the capacity to give me that mentorship, that information that Mr. Duncombe did. And so were it not for the fact that, if I didn't have someone that I could, that could be that sounding board for me, and one of the biggest moments of my life, and just share things with intimately, then there's no way I could have uh, the most in terms of mental health. It's not possible. People who have been abused, women who have been abused, sexually abused when they were younger, older, whatever it may be, men who have been abused, sexual abuse when they were younger or older, physical abuse, mental abuse, all of these things that if you allow those things to fester in you, then it's going to affect your mental health. Now, again, make sure you understand that distinction between the mental health and the mental illness. It's going to affect your mental health if you allow those things, those challenges, those traumas in your life, whether they were past or even present. If you allow those things to fester, then they will affect your mental health. So you have to speak to someone. You just have to. I don't know how else to say it, because I'm not living it. It may be easy for someone who's not living it to say, talk to somebody. That may be easy for me to say. Here's what I can tell you. Even if you have any kind of question, but you don't have the strength to speak to someone, I would encourage you to pray for the strength to speak to someone, to pray for the strength to speak to someone, because it may not be so easy for you to just share and pour your heart out, to anyone to that level. And I get that. I understand that. But I also understand the importance of being able to do that and what could happen if you don't. See Naomi Judd, right? So I'm strongly encouraging people, if you have any kind of, issues, whether they're real, perceived, whatever it may be, to be able to speak to someone. And as I said earlier, I encourage everybody to have at least that one person that you can talk to about anything, no matter what it is, no matter how bad it is, that you can talk to about anything, because that's going to help you in terms of your mental health. Okay, extremely important. Now, let's get back to the mental illness side. What are some of the causes of mental illness? Remember, again, mental illness in a lot of cases you cannot control. It is controlled by outside things. And we'll talk about that, as I said. Mental health, in most cases, you can control it through education, through mentoring, through studying, through personal development, through all of these things. In a lot of cases, mental health you can control. Mental illness you can't, because sometimes mental illnesses are genetic. There are situations where mental illness is passed through generations. It's sad, but it is a reality for a lot of people, and if you know that and you understand that there's nothing you can do about that, then you have to build a fence around your life in order to be able to, and I don't mean a literal fence, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is you have to be able to build yourself enough to thrive and succeed in spite of the genetics of that mental illness, because you can't change it. You can't change the genetics. And again, if somebody have a varying opinion on that, or professional opinion, then by all means, I may be wrong, but I don't think, I'll say it that way, I don't think you can change the genetics of a mental illness. So you have to, but in order to have a successful life, you still have to deal with it in some way, shape, or form. Something else that can cause the mental illness can be your environment. Believe it or not, it can be your environment. Now, I don't mean, like you living in the hood or something, and you'll say, oh, because I'm living in the hood, I got mental illness. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that at all. So that's not mental illness. That's an excuse. You know how many people lived in the hood that became massively successful? So I'm not talking about environment like that, but there may be situations, especially for people who may be living, and I know again, we have a lot of people who are in distressed parts of the world who conditions may not be conducive for mental health. And it may even cause mental illnesses based on what you eat, based on what you drink or not eat or drink. You know, all of these type things can contribute to you actually having mental illness. And again, not to even mention the brain disorders, just it could be some type of trauma. You know, all of these type things can contribute to that mental illness. It's just the brain that is not functioning properly for whatever the reason. Okay. Now, it's rarely caused though by stress alone. I know a lot of people want to, how can I put this? A lot of people kind of get confused with stress and say that, oh, I'm so stressed out, I need a mental day. That's a form of mental health, as I said earlier, not mental illness. Let me bring some clarity to it. I'm sure some of you, if you're into sports, you may have heard like this tennis star Naomi Osaka, um, said she just needed to walk away from tennis for a while because she was mentally stressed. There have been some basketball players, football players. Um, I live in Atlanta. Atlanta Falcons, one of the wide receivers, Calvin Ridley, um, walked away from the game for about a half a year last year because he said he had some mental stress issues that he needed to deal with. Now, understanding stress alone does not warrant mental illness. That's on the side more so of mental health. So why do I say that? Because if it's mental health, if it's on the side of mental health, it can be controlled. Naomi Osaka talked about getting away from the game long enough to recapture, her vigor for tennis just by walking away. That's something that she can control just by getting in an environment that will rebuild her in a certain way, right? That will kind of get her away from all of the stresses of being a number one tennis player and all of these other things. Just kind of get away from that for a second. So you can't get away from mental illness, but you can get away from stress, which is a part of mental health. You have to be able to understand that. But I say that because I don't want people to use stress as an excuse for not thriving in your life. As I mentioned earlier, everybody has some type of stress in their lives. And so if you understand that you need that mental break away from stress, you need a vacation, or, your husband and the wife, you need to get away from the kids for a while, whatever it may be, that's going to help your mental health. But again, you have to take that next step if stress is a part of an illness that you're dealing with on that side. Okay. Um, Something else real quick, and then we'll start to get out of here. A lot of times when people are dealing with stress, it's not so much that it's a mental issue, health wise or illness wise, mental health or mental illness. A lot of times stress, it comes from lack. It comes from lack. Let's just say you're stressing about bills or, things of that nature. And you start to think, oh, I'm having these, these mental things that are going on. I want to do harm to myself, or I want to do harm to my kids or whatever, because I'm just feeling overwhelmed because of these bills, or I'm feeling overwhelmed because of this. Guys, that's not a mental illness. That's a lack in your resources. That's a lack in your life that's causing you to feel stress that feels like an illness, but it's a mental health issue that can easily, I shouldn't say easily, that can be resolved by increasing your income, because that stress is a direct result of a lack of resources. One thing that I learned from someone a long time ago about praying, right? Um, I always prayed, and I pray for people, I pray for things, I pray for I just pray, that we were growing up, just pray. And this person told me many years ago, and I've lived by this, that it's not enough to just pray. You have to pray in order, in order. And I'm thinking, pray in order. What does that mean? What do you mean pray in order? I mean, a prayer is a prayer. God hears it all. I mean, what do you mean just pray in order? And she explained it to me like this. When you're praying, you want to pray and for these particular three things. One, you want to pray for wisdom. You want to write this down. You want to pray for wisdom. Lord, give me the wisdom to say the things that I need to say or do the things that I need to do, but give me the wisdom. Okay, first, give me the wisdom. The second thing you want to pray for in this order, give me the strength. Give me the strength, because you may need strength to execute that wisdom. Okay, so the first thing is wisdom. The second thing is strength. The third thing are the resources. Give me the wisdom, the strength, and the resources to do ... whatever that may be. Now, I didn't understand it, but I'm a very coachable person. If I don't know something, I'll try it. If it's somebody that's doing some things that I respect, and I tried it. I start praying in that order. Lord, don't give me things. Don't give me a car. Don't give me a house. Don't give me, these things that I'm praying for. It sounds so ridiculous when I even say it. Don't give me the things. Give me the wisdom to do the things that I need to do, to say the things that I need to say in order to have the things that I need to have. Wow, that's powerful. As I'm thinking about it, I'm getting excited all over again. Give me the wisdom to say the things that I need to say and do the wisdom to do the things that I need to do. But you know what, guys? The wisdom alone is not enough. Okay, I know what I need to do, but I need the strength to do it. I know that I need to work out. I know that, right? I know that I need to work out. I know that I need to eat properly. That's wisdom. I know that. But I need some strength, Lord, because I love to eat. I love to eat, right? I need the strength. I need some strength. I can't just say I'm gonna do this and do. I need the strength, right? And I'm being a little funny, facetious, but you understand the point. And then the other part where a lot of people get it mixed up is that third part. Give me the resources to execute that wisdom that you've given me the strength to do, but now I need the resources. See, the wisdom may tell me that I need to fly over to London or to Europe and visit my team over there, visit my people over there, do some things over there and build over there. That's what the wisdom has shared with me. I have the strength to do it. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. But guess what? I may not have $2,000 for the flight. So I still can't go. It still doesn't work. I got the wisdom. I know I need to go to London. I need to tour Europe. That's the wisdom. I got the strength. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. I can pack my suitcase and I can go today. So I got the strength to do it. But I don't have the resources, Lord. I can't afford to go to London. I can't afford to pay $2,000, round trip flight. And then you get there and the currency conversion, it costs a lot more money to do transactions through euros and pounds than it does with dollars. So, it's more expensive. So I can't afford to do it, even though I had a wisdom. Guys, when you understand to pray in that manner, the wisdom, the strength, and the resources, then you cover that triad of things that need to take place where you can become whole and your prayers can be fulfilled. Okay. Now, getting back to mental health and mental illness, how does that relate to what I'm talking about with mental health. The first two parts, in fact, all three parts, is how it relates to mental health. You have to have you're praying, remember now, you're praying for this. You're praying for the wisdom to say what you need to say to this mentor, to this person, to this confidant. Okay, you have to be able to say the wisdom to say what you need to say to that person, but then you have to have the strength in a lot of cases. It takes a lot of strength to pour your heart and bare your soul to people, even if it's a confidant. Nobody wants to air their dirty laundry or, say this happened to me or say I feel this way, any of that stuff. No one wants to do that just readily, right? So it may take a bit of strength to get that done. So you have to understand why you pray, how you pray, and why you pray in order to make these things happen. So in wrapping up and concluding, I don't want to, belabor the point. Hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying. I do want you to study, continue to study the difference between mental health and mental illness, understanding that a lot of things that you cannot control, even with your kids, there are a lot of kids that have been classified as, what is it, ADD, attention deficit disorder. You're in class and, the teacher said that this kid is not attentive, they're disruptive and all of these things. That could be a thing. That could be a thing. That could be a form of mental illness, but it also could be a part of mental health. Well, so what does that mean? That means ain't nothing wrong with that kid. That kid doesn't have ADD. That kid is just a bad kid. It's a bad kid. And how do you transition from being a bad kid to have mental health? You get your butt beat till you understand that you can't be disrupting school. That's a difference now. There's a difference. I mean, when I was in school, talking about early education school, and I'm aging myself now, but I don't think there was even a term called ADD. ADD was solved by the time you got home, because when that teacher called your mama, called my mama, and my mama was waiting at the door with a belt, then baby, that next day, it wasn't no such thing as ADD. I was sitting down on my A, and I get the point, right? But I don't want to, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but I don't want to minimize the fact that there are professionals who now understand that there are kids who have an attention deficit disorder, and that is an illness. That's something that you cannot control readily. Okay, it's a challenge to control. There are people who suffer from autism, who have challenges that you cannot control so readily, right? And we have to be able to understand the difference between, that illness, ADD or autism or whatever it may be, hyperactivity, versus having a bad kid that just needs some discipline, or you that may just need some discipline, things of that nature. So we have to be aware of those things, guys, and we just have to understand it, have to be able to know when we need to treat it. If you're sad, talk to somebody. If you feel overwhelmed, talk to somebody. If you feel stressed, talk to somebody. Look, guys, your life, people get life a lot of times mixed up. And I don't want to preach. This is another podcast for another day. But sometimes people get life all mixed up. And, let me say this like a birthday party. A lot of times people say, well, I don't want a birthday party, a birthday party. I don't need a birthday party. I'm good. Well, you know what? A birthday party ain't for you. It's for your family. Your birthday party is for other people. Believe it or not, it's for other people. It is to give them a sense of joy. It is to give them a sense of giving. It may not be for you. Not in all cases, but you understand what I'm saying. Life is the same way. Life is the same way. And when people, and please don't take this the wrong way. Please don't take this the wrong way. But when people commit suicide, right? In my opinion, it's a selfish act because your life is not just for you, it's for other people, it's for your family, it's for people who love you. Now, again, let me just say this one more time. I'm not saying this to like say, when I say it's a selfish act, I'm not saying you're doing anything um, wrong per se. I mean, especially if you talk about mental illness, you may not even have that level of control, right? But what I mean is your life is not just for you, it's for the people who love you, the people you may leave behind. So the importance of that statement is this. You got to talk to somebody. You got to pray for that wisdom. You got to pray for that strength. You got to bear your soul. Don't have so much pride, especially men and especially Black men. We've been raised to not cry. We've been raised to have strength. We've been raised to not be vulnerable. We've been raised all of this stuff that can cause internal mental health issues because we're trying to be, you know, all big and bad and strong and all of these other stuff when we know that if you cut us, we will bleed. We are still subject to human emotions, human disposition, and all these other things, right? So, we got to be able to talk to people. Men, Black men, you got to be able to talk to people. Be able to share something. I don't care if it's that one person. It could be a family member, it could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a stranger, but you got to be able to talk. If you're sad, if you're stressed, if you're worried, if you feel that no way out, if the walls are closing in on you, you got to talk to somebody. If you're always feeling angry, if you wake up, here's a clue that you need. If you need to talk to somebody, here's a clue. If you wake up mad, that's a clue you need to talk to somebody. If you wake up mad, that's a clue that you need to talk to somebody. If you find yourself doing reckless things that can harm yourself or harm somebody else, just reckless things, that's a clue that you need to talk to somebody. If you feel grief for an extraordinarily long period of time after somebody passed or some type of trauma in your life, you may need to speak to somebody. Alcohol or drug abuse, again, a lot of this stuff, is chemical imbalances, and addiction is a real thing. Depression is a real thing. And it's not so easy for people. I mean, it's easy for people who are not suffering with that, or alcoholism or drug addiction or depression. It's easy for people who are not suffering from those things to say, talk to somebody. But when you're suffering with alcoholism or drug addiction or depression, a lot of cases you may not even know. You may be the last person to think you have an alcohol issue. This is why I would say this. If someone is telling you you need to see someone about your drinking, or you need to see someone about your drug habits, or you need to see someone about your depression, even if you don't see it yourself, at the very least, do what I said earlier. Pray for the wisdom and the strength to have some kind of recognition of where you are so that you can get some help. Because an alcoholic doesn't know that they're an alcoholic. The best thing that we can do, if we can't do some type of intervention, is to at least admonish them to pray for the strength to recognize what's going on in their lives. There's been many, many people who have had drug addiction or alcoholism who at some point were able to pray for themselves, and that broke that hold of addiction. Depression is a real thing, and depression is a mental illness that causes mental health issues. Let me say that again. Depression is a mental illness that causes mental health issues. Okay. So depression is a thing. You got to talk to somebody. You got to be able to do that. Now, I do want to make that distinction between, again, a clinical depression versus a pity party. A pity party can be changed instantaneously by changing your thoughts. Your mind can't have but one thought at a time. And if you're having a pity party or woe is me party, you can get out of that instantaneously by changing your thoughts. Okay, by changing your thoughts. But a clinically diagnosed person who is depressed, then that's a different ball game, and it requires a different level of attention. And that starts with talking to someone. Believe it or not, binge eating is a sign of can be both mental health and a mental illness. Binge eating. You just have to understand those type things. So look, guys, I can go on and on and on. I'm sure you get the point. I don't want to belabor the point. This is not a happy topic to talk about, but it was an extremely important topic. It's something that, we just have to be able to address, period. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. I challenge myself in a lot of cases when I'm dealing with things, and I have to make a conscious effort to say, hey, look, am I dealing with this because of just something normal, or is it something that I need to speak with someone about? One of my mentors. If speaking to a therapist, there's nothing wrong with speaking to a therapist. You got to be able to get out of that funk. It's a life and death matter. So you have to be able to take these things seriously. I admonish and encourage everybody to take these things seriously. Hopefully you were able to take a bit of notes today, and you got something out of what I shared. And so that's going to do it for tonight. Now, as we move forward, guys, all of you who are part of the Deep Dive Podcast Facebook group, I'm encouraging you guys to interact with each other and interact with me through the Deep Dive Podcast, through the website. You see it here on the screen if you're looking on YouTube, or if not, it is the Deep Dive Podcast.live. The email is info@thedeepdivepodcast.live. Send me an email. If you're having any issues that you don't have anyone to talk to about, send me an email. Okay, send me an email. I'll make sure that we can get you the help that you may need, a conversation, converse about something, whatever it may be. But don't not, speak to someone about it. Shoot us an email. Okay. Continue to support our podcast. We're on all the major platforms. I think we're on about 22, 23 different podcast platforms now, all over the globe. So continue to support. I appreciate that. Like, subscribe, download, and share. And in the future weeks, we're going to have some more uplifting and enlightening and entertaining podcasts. I know the last few weeks, we're trying to empower people through financial education and mental health, but we're going to have some fun as well. I got a couple of comedians that's going to be on soon, and, we're going to have some fun. But in the meantime, guys, again, I appreciate you so much for your support. Thank you for following the Deep Dive Podcast. Go to the YouTube channel at the Deep Dive Podcast with Sam, or put my name. There are multiple Deep Dive podcasts out there, and let's continue to grow together. And by the way, if you or anybody is open to being a guest on the Deep Dive Podcast because you bring some type of value to our audience, or whatever that may be, shoot us an email at info@thedeepdivepodcast.live, or you can leave a message, even a voice message, on the website, the deepdivepodcast.live website. You can actually leave a voicemail message on that website, so that let me know that, hey, look, you got some value, you got something that you could bring to the table, to the audience, an international audience, a domestic audience, whatever it may be. All right. So we're going to get out of here for the day. I appreciate it. Again, next week, we're going to be right back here, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on next Thursday night as well. God bless each and every one of you, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.